Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Word with Bree. Oh, I just totally kicked my camera. Okay, welcome to In the Word with Bree. This is kind of like a Bible reading community where we get together and we read the Bible with one another daily. Looks like I skipped a day. I don't know when that happened or how that happened, so we might just get 2 videos. That's probably irrelevant to you, but I'm gonna try to squeeze in 2 videos somewhere this week because I'm behind. I'm reading Wednesday and it's Thursday. Anyways, I'm so sorry that I skipped a day. That happens. So we will be in Genesis 32 today. I will be reading from my Christian Standard Bible translation. That's my favorite. Go ahead and pick your favorite and follow along with me. And yeah, let me open this up in prayer and then we'll get started. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for this time in your word. We pray that you would just join us and that you would be with us in this community. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for everybody that's here and that's going to hear your word today. And yeah, we just pray that you join us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Genesis 32, preparing to meet Esau. Genesis is kind of like the Pentateuch. It's called the Pentateuch, and it's kind of like a story that kind of tells the history of the Hebrews or the Jewish people. So during Genesis, if you feel kind of lost because you're just kind of coming in today, that's okay. Don't worry about it. It's like a story where you can just pick up where we are. But if you'd like some like backstory or some context, go ahead and watch Genesis from the beginning if you can, if you have time. You don't have to, but if you do, it's going to make the story make sense. It's kind of like picking up your favorite show in the middle. You can do it, but it's going to make more sense if you have the history of the characters. So if you have a chance, go back, watch the other videos, because Genesis is kind of like a continued story. And some of the books of the Bible are like that. Some of the historical books, the Pentateuch, can be like that. So sometimes it makes it easier to understand. So anyways, if you have time, go ahead and watch that. I created a playlist, so just click the playlist and it's just going to run each video. It'll make it easier for you to just go in order. So anyways, let's get started. Genesis 32. Preparing to meet Esau. Jacob went on his way, and God's angels met him. When he saw them, Jacob said, "This is God's camp." So he called that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the territory of Edom. He commanded them, "You are to say to my lord Esau, 'This is what your servant Jacob says. I have been staying with Laban and have been delayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female slaves. I have sent this message to inform my lord in order to seek your favor." When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to your brother Esau. He is coming to meet you, and he has 400 men with him." Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people with him into 2 camps, along with the flocks, herds, and camels. He thought, if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, the remaining camp can escape. Then Jacob said, "God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, 'Go back to your land and to your family, and I will cause you to prosper.' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Indeed, I crossed over the Jordan with my staff and now have become 2 camps. Please rescue me from my brother Esau, for I am afraid of him. Otherwise, he may come and attack me, the mothers and their children. You have said, 'I will cause you to prosper, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, too numerous to be counted.'" He spent the night there and took part of what he had brought with him as a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats, 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. Before we continue, just a recap. So Jacob is afraid of his brother Esau, because if you watched the other videos, if you didn't, I'm going to let you know a little bit, but still go back and listen to them. Jacob stole his brother's birthright and his blessing. And so Esau, they're twins. So Esau was extremely furious with his brother Jacob when his father died and wanted to kill him. So their mother told Jacob, like, you need to run away. So God told Jacob to go home, go back to where Esau is. And so Jacob, rightfully so, because he kind of tricked his dad into getting his brother's blessing. So Jacob does this a few times. He tricks his brother. So there's like this little bit of like twin and brother rivalry between the two, and Jacob is genuinely afraid. So when it says he's coming with 400 men, that would be like an army. So he's coming with like fighting men. So the way this looks doesn't look good for Jacob. So he's trying to kind of split everything up so that he can try to bring his brother a gift. But if anything happens, then he wants his people to try to get away. So if Esau attacks him. So that's kind of what's going on here. That's why there's some fear. It doesn't like outright kind of say all of that, but if you know what's going on and what's happening in the story, like you can understand why Jacob's afraid, because last time he saw his brother wanted to kill him. So this kind of makes sense. So anyways, he's now split everything, and he's going to take it as a gift for his brother Esau and hopefully win him over with that. So we're going to pick up on 32:16. Jacob entrusted them to his slaves as separate herds and said to them, "Go on ahead of me and leave some distance between the herds." And he told the first one, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'Who do you belong to? Where are you going? And whose animals are these ahead of you?' Then tell him, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau. And look, he is behind us.'" He also told the second and the third, and everyone who walks behind the animals, "Say the same thing to Esau when you find him. You are also to say, 'Look, your servant Jacob is right behind us.'" For he thought, "I want to appease Esau with the gift that is going ahead of me. After that, I can face him and perhaps he will forgive me." So the gift was sent on ahead of him while he remained in the camp that night. During the night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 slave women, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream along with his possessions. 32:24. Jacob wrestles with God. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not defeat him, he struck Jacob's hip socket as they wrestled and dislocated his hip. Then he said to Jacob, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob," he replied. "Your name will no longer be Jacob," he said. "It will be Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he answered, "Why do you ask my name?" And he blessed him there. Jacob then named the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, he said. Yet my life has been spared. The sun shone on him as he passed by Peniel, limping because of his hip. That is why still today the Israelites don't eat the thigh muscle that is at the hip socket, because he struck Jacob's hip socket on at the thigh muscle. Okay, I'm going to interrupt one more again, maybe not one more time, but this is such an interesting story. There's a lot of not a lot of debate, but there's some debate on what's going on, who Jacob's wrestling with, what it all means. It's kind of like in this odd place in between the story of Jacob and Esau meeting again. So like I've said in a couple of my other videos, in the comments below, there are some sermons that go over the passages. If you're interested in some of the different debates, or some of what, or just diving deeper into this particular passage, there are some sermons that will be in the comments below. So go ahead and click on those. They're really fascinating. It's really cool. But again, it's just kind of oddly placed right there. It's just kind of like this. It seems random. It's not random because God's not random. It seems random to us, but the sermons that I have, or the messages that I have in there, are really interesting, and they're cool on how they kind of tie into the story. So go ahead and check those out if you'd like to dive deeper on this what seemingly random passage. Okay, we continue on, because I think we still have 2 more chapters to read. So Genesis 33, Jacob meets Esau. So here's this build up to Jacob meeting Esau. He's nervous, he's afraid for his life. Esau wanted to kill him last time he sent him. And I think too, you see a little bit like he's coming and bringing like all these gifts, giving him half of everything that he has. And he says, and I hope that perhaps he will forgive me. I think you're seeing regret and remorse. And obviously Jacob knew he did something not so honorable. And so I think sometimes when we do things that we know we shouldn't do, and we come face to face with that person, again, we've wronged somebody, we can kind of like, I don't know, punish ourselves, as we're going to find out as we read more. But we can kind of, when we sin, it can become bigger than ourselves, and it kind of haunts us. So let's see what happens. Genesis 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming toward him with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the 2 slave women. He put the slaves and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Okay, and that's interesting too. So he's thinking that if his this is awful, but if his brother attacks, he's putting the slaves and their children closer to the 400 people. Then next it would be Rachel and her sons closer. And then last, in the way back, would be Rachel and Joseph. And that's because that's the thinking is if my family gets attacked, who is he closest to? Who does he love the most? He loves Rachel and Joseph. Those are like really near and dear to his heart. Rachel was who he wanted to marry. And so ultimately, if they get attacked, they're in the back, and they can maybe escape or run away if they get attacked by Esau. He put the slaves and their children first, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. He himself went on ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times until he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, hugged him, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Then they wept. It's so beautiful. So beautiful. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he asked, "Who are these with you?" So I love that. Again, I think, sorry, I'm stopping again, but I think there's just so much here. Jacob had really worked himself up because he knew, like, obviously he had wronged Esau, and he was concerned, and it's just such a picture, I think, of sometimes when we wrong somebody else, we naturally feel like this guilt, and like, because if it was us, we would be mad at them and we would be holding on to it. And so to see the grace and like all this buildup, and it's like so much buildup between the two brothers, and that the emotion just comes out, and they weep with one another. And obviously there's like relief for Jacob. Like, he had all this guilt and he was thinking his brother was gonna hurt him, and when he was met with the grace, like, the animosity between them is just broken. And I think that is something that is so important for today, that when people have wronged us and we meet them with grace, animosity is broken. Or when we have wronged somebody and we are met with that grace, the animosity is broken. And that is what we're called to do as Christians and as Christ followers, is that when we're wronged, we forgive. And that animosity, that division between us is broken. It's gone. And it's so hard to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And we have every right. Esau has every right to be angry with Jacob. And yet he forgives. And I think that it's just so beautiful. So beautiful. Okay. Sorry. Continuing on. Let's pick up on 33:5. We'll just reread that. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he asked, "Who are these with you?" He answered, "The children God has graciously given your servant." Then the slaves and their children approached him and bowed down. Leah and her children also approached and bowed down. And then Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. So Esau said, What do you mean by this whole procession I met? To find favor with you, my lord, he answered. I have enough, my brother, Esau replied. Keep what you have. But Jacob said, No, please. If I have found favor with you, take this gift from me. For indeed, I have seen your face, and it is like seeing God's face, since you have accepted me. Again, right there, that's that grace. It's that when we forgive, people see God's face. They see Jesus in us. And that's exactly what Jacob is saying. You've forgiven me. And it's like seeing God's face. It's seeing his grace in action. And that's just so beautiful. I'm so sorry. I just love this. Genesis 33:11. Please take my present that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me and I have everything I need. So Jacob urged him until he accepted. Then Esau said, Let's move on and I'll go ahead of you. Jacob replied, My Lord knows that the children are weak and I have nursing flocks and herds. If they are driven hard for one day, the whole herd will die. Let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will continue on slowly at a pace suited to the livestock and the children until I come to my Lord at Seir. Esau said, Let me leave some of my people with you. But he replied, Why do that? Please indulge me, my Lord. That day, Esau started on his way back to Seir, but Jacob went to Succoth. He built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is called Succoth. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at Shechem in the land of Canaan and camped in front of the city. He purchased a section of the field where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Haram, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver. And he set up an altar there and called it God, the God of Israel. Okay, so we're going to continue on. I know this is going to be a longer video. We're going to do a little bit of a transition, kind of, from Jacob and Esau. And yeah, we're going to kind of get a look at some things there in Shechem. So Genesis 34, Dinah defiled. Just a little, what is it, like, there's some graphic stuff. I mean, it's not super graphic, but it's more of an adult thing. So if you have children that listen with you, just give a little heads up. Obviously, it's called Dinah defiled. So if you're not quite ready to explain what that means to your little ones, I would suggest maybe pausing it and having the little ones leave. But if not, I mean, it's not anything that the language isn't super horrible. So Genesis 34. Leah's daughter Dinah, whom Leah bore to Jacob, went out to see some of the young women of the area. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, who was the region's chieftain, saw her, he took her and raped her. He became infatuated with Jacob's daughter Dinah. He loved the young girl and spoke tenderly to her. "Get me this girl as a wife," he told his father. Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were with the livestock in the field, he remained silent until they returned. Meanwhile, Shechem's father Hamor came to speak with Jacob. Jacob's sons returned from the field when they heard about the incident. They were deeply grieved and very angry, for Shechem had committed an outrage against Israel by raping Jacob's daughter, and such a thing should not be done. Hamor said to Jacob's son, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife. Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Live with us. The land is before you. Settle here, move about, and acquire property in it." Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, "Grant me this favor, and I'll give you whatever you say. Demand of me a high compensation and gift. I'll give you whatever you ask. Just give me the girl to be my wife." But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully, because he had defiled their sister Dinah. "We cannot do this thing," they said to them. "Giving our sister to an uncircumcised man is a disgrace to us. We will agree with you only on this condition: if all your males are circumcised as we are, then we will give you our daughters. Take your daughters for ourselves, live with you, and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Their words seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man did not delay doing this, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most important in the father's family. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city. "These men are peaceful toward us," they said. "Let them live in our land and move about in it, for indeed the region is large enough for them. Let's take their daughters as our wives and give our daughters to them. But the men will agree to live with us and be one people only on this condition: if all our men are circumcised as they are. Won't their livestock, their possessions, and all their animals become ours? Only let's agree with them, and they will live with us." All the men who had come to the city gates listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and all those men were circumcised. On the third day, when they were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords, went into the unsuspecting city, and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with their swords, took Dinah from Shechem's house, and went away. Jacob's sons came to slaughter and plunder the city because their sister had been defiled. So real quick, so this was a trick that the brothers essentially played on them. They told them to become circumcised, which, I mean, they did, because ultimately when adults get circumcised, it causes tremendous pain. There's pain and there's some bleeding, and so they're really not able to defend themselves the way that they normally could. There's a lot of time in healing. As you can imagine, that's super sensitive. So that was their plan. Their plan was to ultimately essentially weaken them and then take advantage during their time of healing. So that's kind of what happened there. Let's pick up on 34. 27. Jacob's sons came to slaughter and plunder the city because their sister had been defiled. They took their flocks, herds, donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field. They captured all their possessions, dependents, and wives, and plundered everything in the house. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me, making me odious to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. We are few in numbers. If they unite against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they answered, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?" And we'll end there. And again, there at the end, it's so interesting. It's kind of like we feel like the brothers aren't wrong. And so again, if this is, sometimes these things are really hard to read for me. I find anytime there's rape or anything like that, it's really hard for me to read these passages, but they're important to read and to understand. So again, if you want to dive deeper, which I highly recommend for both of the in 34 and for this one, I recommend watching a sermon. You can either click one of the ones that I've got in mine, or find your favorite pastor and see if he's done a study on these two particular passages. Dive deeper into these, because it is important that we read them, and it's important that we understand them, and then how they connect to the bigger picture and the bigger scope of the Bible. Really crazy place to stop, but that's where we're going to end for today. Thanks again for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye.